Hi, I'm Richard Friedman, and welcome to my video cartoon for July 31st, 2025. Here today, I have President Donald Trump visiting the Federal Reserve headquarters that's being renovated. This 100-year-old building is being renovated now, and in the midst of this is the controversy he's going through with Jerome Powell over Jerome Powell's failure to, in his view, to lower interest rates, which would be good for America and the economy. And Powell has held fast that because of President Trump's tariffs, that the uncertainty that they created in terms of the inflation possibilities and the lowering of interest rates, combined with that, would increase that possibility of inflation, because the old supply-demand curve, if you ever study economics, you know that there's a supply-demand curve. If you increase the demand and the supply stays constant, your prices will rise. So you'd have two factors. You'd have President Trump's tariffs, and then you'd have the money that people could borrow to buy more goods with lower interest rates going after the goods that would raise the prices further. So that would be furthering inflation. So that's Powell's argument. He said he would have, had President Trump not introduced all these tariffs, he would have lowered the rates. President Trump wants the rates lowered to right now the discount. It's called the discount rate, is what the Fed sets. The discount rate, which is the rate that commercial banks, that the Federal Reserve Bank charges commercial banks. That's the discount rate, to borrow money so they can so the commercial banks can loan money to businesses to buy the goods and increase and hire more people. And that's how the whole thing works, by the Fed controlling interest rates and controlling inflation in that respect. So there you have it. That's like the basics of it. So President Trump wants the discount rate that it's currently at 4.25, 4.50, which that is now at, to be lowered to 1%. You see? So here's the thing here, and he sent this to Chairman Powell. He's very strong about that to show him that this is what all the countries that he had, and it says should be here. So President Trump is saying that the discount rate, basically, he said it himself, should be around 1% or even lower than 1%. Somewhere, as an average here, would be lower than 1%. If you take the averages of all this, it would be lower than 1%. And that's what President Trump is shooting for. Now, what happened yesterday was that the Federal Reserve voted, and the majority of them voted to hold interest rates as they are at the discount rate. You see, 4.25, 4.50, as they are, because of those factors that I just mentioned. Now, the thing is, President Trump, he basically has been very strong here with this idea that lowering the interest rates would help us pay off our debt, the expanding national debt that we have, which is now under his budget is rising 4.1, I think about $4.1 trillion more from his budget. I don't want to get into that because that's another cartoon. But his budget, the bottom line on his budget is it raises the debt $4.1 trillion. Okay? So that, he's saying that to help us pay that down, the lowering of interest rates would help that. Now, Powell's argument is that, again, as I said before, it would be inflationary because you'd have more money chasing goods, which causes the prices to rise on top of Trump's tariffs. So there's the two schools of thought. You decide how you want to think about that. This is a very important cartoon, because the fact is that the two people who voted for lowering interest rates on the Federal Reserve Board there were President Trump appointees from 2017 during his first term. Now, if Trump comes around and fires Powell because of the Supreme Court has already ruled that President Trump here cannot fire Powell on a kind of like on a whim. He can't fire him on a whim and to wake up one morning and say you're fired because you didn't lower interest rates. You're fired. Now, he can't do that on a policy decision. But what he can do is if he gets like his budget people, big high level budget people to say that, yeah, we went over the books and everything, and he definitely and President Trump comes out and said, my people have gone over the books and everything, and this project has been mismanagement. And here's an example of the tile here, you see. And the thing is that and Russ Vought, Voughc, Trump's top budget advisor, cited premium marble, quote, premium marble in a letter to Powell weeks ago as an example of the, quote, ostentatious overhaul. You see? And President Trump says, well, I know Chairman Powell's bad for the country, but I didn't know we needed to live in a palace. So there you go. So he's saying that basically Powell's building a palace for himself on America's money and accusing him of mismanagement for his own ego or whatever you want to say about that. Okay. So given President Trump has looked to the marble finishes and hefty price tag of the Federal Reserve headquarters to claim grounds to fire Chair Powell, who he has demanded immediate and steep rate cuts from, down to 1%. In response to Vought, in response to this Vought letter, Powell wrote back that the project would use, quote, use new domestic marble. That means manufactured here in this country, new domestic marble. A legal battle could be brewing over mismanagement since the Supreme Court in May said the Fed chair has protections against abrupt firing. Now that means the Supreme Court always puts in and out for themselves, abrupt. Again, that goes back to firing because of interest rates. But if he could show that it was mismanagement, a pattern of mismanagement, and for his own self-aggrandizement, or whatever you want to say, and there it was, he's building a palace for himself, like he's a royal king, and wants to live in this palace of a beautiful tile and everything like that. So for his committee and for that Federal Reserve headquarters, he could take the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, well, guess what? Supreme Court go along with President Trump, say, well, yeah, and then what happens is that President Trump, in my opinion, could take one of these two people he appointed way back in 2017, put them as chairman, and then the United States basically loses its the Federal Reserve loses its independence because it's now under the umbrella of President Trump. And the appearance could be that. And I'm saying it would be a different thing. I'm saying the appearance could be, that appearance could be conveyed since these people were appointed by Trump and they voted in favor of his policy. It could be argued, people could see this as basically the Fed now being under the influence of President Trump. And that would lower the credibility of our financial, of that institution, and a lot of people might not want to loan us money or lower us money at higher rates because they lose confidence in the fact that of the independence of the Fed, which has been a foundation of our economic system, and that independence would be gone, and that would create higher interest rates. That's a possibility. Okay, so there it is. Those are the possibilities, and that goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, again, as it determined that other things that have had a great influence on the country could determine our economic future as well, could be determined by the Supreme Court ruling on whether if it is permissible, legally permissible for President Trump to fire Powell because of mismanagement. And there you have it. And that's the essence of it here. Okay, and Powell said he would work on that the project would use new domestic marble. And here goes my cartoon here. And again here, I want to show you. Again, I showed you the. I don't remember whether I showed you the. Those are the things I did show you that, but this I didn't show you the letter that President Trump wrote to Powell. This is a letter with the emblem of the United States there. Okay, and he said this. He said, "Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost your USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars being lost. No inflation." So President Trump is saying no inflation. And everybody who goes into a supermarket today knows that there is inflation. So President Trump's saying no inflation. I don't know what he means. He's saying maybe no. I don't know what he means. I honestly don't. But that's what he said in a letter to Powell. And there was his signature. I imitated that. I did not use an auto signature. I don't have no auto signature of President Trump. I don't want anybody out there to get nervous that I have an auto signature of President Trump. I do not. I just imitated his signature here. So that's just an imitation and no automatic signature on my part or that I have. And there it is. There was the emblem of the United States, and this was what he sent to called him Jerome, like they're good buddies, trying to get on the good side of him, I guess. But now he called him Numbskull, and now on the other side of the coin he called him a Numbskull, and too late, pal. So there you have it. So that was it. Here's the cartoon, and here was again President Trump and Powell at Richards. This is my creation here of them stopping. There was nothing shown on television. They stopped in front of the facade of the Federal Reserve headquarters. But here it is. I used this because of the tile example, and there it was. There again is the eagle on top of the building there. There's the eagle. Okay, there was building. There was the crane there with all the construction going on. Okay. And there's the stuff flowing down here, showing the work being done here. And here it goes. Okay. Again, Russ Vought, Trump's top budget advisor, cited premium marble in a letter to Powell weeks ago as an example of the ostentatious overhaul. I said that already. I'm repeating myself because I want that's an important part of the background here to understand that he's already under scrutiny for this the marble, and also that he said he's going to use domestic marble. But in this here, what happens is Powell changes his mind, suddenly being put under the pressure by President Trump. And here is the cartoon as goes forward here. Here is Powell. Here's Powell. Mr. President, how do you like our historically preserved, renovated marble facade? So the idea was to preserve the historical integrity of this structure as it was built 100 years ago. And there to preserve it with its marble formations and stuff. That was the basic theme here. And then President Trump goes, that premium marble helped to zoom this renovation to $3.1 billion. Helped $3.1 billion. I never knew you needed a palace to live in. Trump actually said he called it a palace. He needs a palace. I knew he was bad for the country, but I never knew he needed a palace. Okay? And that's the headquarters for the Federal Reserve where they meet, and that's it. That's the headquarters on the renovation, 100-year-old building. Okay, now here goes Powell answering President Trump back, and he says, here goes Powell, and he's answering back. He said, Mr. President, for other renovations, I just now decided to import other tile renovations. I just now decided to import less expensive marble from Madagascar. So he's going to get a less expensive tile imported from Madagascar. You know, it's a country that they do export tile. They are exporter of tile, Madagascar. So that I checked that out. Okay, now here goes President Trump for the punchline. President Trump gets the last word. President Trump gets the last word here. The last word goes to President Trump. Too late, pal. I just decided to add a tariff on Madagascar marble of 500%. So there goes his savings on the tile. So it's going to, if he does that, it could be more expensive than the tile he bought here in the United States, ensuring that he still hangs in there at that $3.1 billion mark. And again, subject to being scrutinized by President Trump's budget people and President Trump, and heading on to the Supreme Court to get him the heck out of there and there you have it. You know the rest of it. I said it already. So I want to thank you. Here it is again. Here's the eagle. There's the construction going on there. There was the facade of the federal headquarters building, 100 years old, being renovated. And there was Powell. And there, finishing it off, getting the last words, President Trump. And he's saying here, a tariff on Madagascar marble of 500%. And then he's raising that 5. There goes the 5 fingers for 500%. 500% tariff on Madagascar tile. That's it. Effective tomorrow. And there it goes. All right, folks. Thank you for watching my video. God bless you. And I'll see you next time. Hang in there. Bye.